So Canadians look forward to a growth of about 3% this year. Our unemployment is still a little bit high by Canadian standards at almost 8%, but compared to lots of other people around the world and lots of people in the United States, we're looking pretty strong. On the political front, Canada had an election a few weeks ago, ended a long, long period of minority parliaments. Everybody understand how parliamentary system works. The parties, if you have more votes on the non-government side than you have on the government side, then you have a minority, even though the government may hold the largest block. And then, in theory, they cooperate among themselves and work out coalitions. And what we mostly did was just sneer at each other for about 7 years, and very little got done. So now we have a majority government, and we're going to be watching with excitement to see what they do with their mandate. One thing is clear is the Conservatives are a business-friendly, low tax being a central theme of their political dialogue. They also are pledged to pay off the national debt to zero in about 3 more years, and they certainly are very strong in expanding trade and investment, inviting foreign investment into Canada, and modernizing infrastructure. So staying out of the marketplace as much as they can. Basically, I look forward to a good relationship with this government, and I think Canada has a chance to do some great things. The Chamber of Commerce, however, is looking a little like Cassandra these days. We see concerns that are a little bit difficult. You know the story of Cassandra? The god Apollo thought she was very cute, gave her the gift of seeing the future, but she wouldn't. Well, you can guess what she wouldn't. And so he got angry and added the caveat that although she could see the future, no one would believe her predictions. So I thought that was not a bad plot line for a situation comedy that we could see into. That wacky Cassandra. So at the Chamber, we're raising serious concerns about the Canadian economy, and I think probably some of the things we're concerned about reflect in the United States as well. And right at the moment, Canadians are not much inclined to listen because, as I said, they're thinking things are going pretty well for themselves. But it's worth remembering how much the Canadians need to learn from the relentless, innovative, driving force of U.S. business, because in Canada, our share of world exports has fallen fairly calamitously in the last decade from almost 4.5%, 4.3% of the world's exports, down to 2.5%. We've lost almost a quarter of our share of U.S. imports. We do a less good job as business people. We invest 23% less in equipment and machinery than you in America. We invest 40% less in information technologies, which I think was the big driver of productivity in the United States in the 90s. We came 17th when it came to business R&D spending. And it goes to show, although America has some persistent economic problems, we're going to be watching the budget process in Washington with great interest, and watching the state governments wrestling with serious debt problems and terrible decisions to be made there. Ron Kirk was at a speech that he made in September, and he said, "You should take no satisfaction from the hole in my end of the boat." We are closely integrated. Where Canada is suffering, Americans should be upset. Where America is suffering, Canadians are upset. Where we can work together to fix these problems, we must. We saw the President's announcement of a 50% increase in exports as a national target last year as a very, very exciting announcement, and something that we're very supportive of. We think that if that target was to be reached, Canada would play a huge role in that. We're a lot closer than Europe. We're a lot wealthier than Colombia and Panama, and we are so much friendlier than Korea and China. But to quote Trade Representative Kirk, in order for us to buy, we have to be wealthy, and in order for us to be wealthy, we have to sell. And the good thing about being a partner with Canada is that when we sell things to the United States, the money we use, we then buy manufactured goods from the United States. It's a virtuous circle. We're tied together. There are competitors coming at us, and one of the messages I go around waving my arms around in Canada about is the degree to which people don't grasp the change that's occurring on our watch. In the last decade or so, the whole balance of world economic power has started to shift very quickly. I was at the OECD in Paris a couple of weeks ago, and they predict that Asians will represent 50% of the world's output in 20 more years. Their gross domestic product will be larger than that of the G7. As a group, developing countries now represent 37% of global output, but that's up from 23% in 1990. The speed of their growth is fantastic. And more ominous, I think, from where we stand, is that 40% of all the researchers in the world are from Asia, and half of them are from China. Canada's not producing researchers at anywhere near the pace we need to remain competitive. These people are coming to eat our lunch, and they're entitled to the things they want. They want the things that we've had for the last couple of decades, for the last 100 years. A bigger slice, bigger world pie means bigger slices for everybody. But I want to stress that they don't want a slice. They want to bake the pie and sell pieces of it to us, and they're entitled to that. They're not our enemies, but they're not precisely our friends either. They're our competitors, and when you compete, you have to win, or else you're a loser, and the other side dictates the future. So how do we respond by that? Well, in Canada, we believe the first thing we would do in North America is ensure our continental economy is efficient. We cannot afford division and segregation in the market. We can't afford it. It costs too much money. And we can't allow political divisions between people who share the same values, the same legal system, the same approach to free trade, and a myriad other issues. John Kennedy said economics made us partners, but necessity makes us allies, and I think that's wise. When I was in politics, as the governor mentioned, we negotiated the free trade agreement, and we were quite literally at that time the envy of the world, and deservedly so, because trade between the two countries has tripled since that agreement was signed 25 years ago. A quarter of a century of free trade has, I think, probably been one of the most successful economic partnerships between any nations in the history of the world. And the partnership, of course, involves other things as well. It's deep and involves cultural. We threw in Shania Twain and Pamela Anderson. You got Jim Carrey, the Sweeteners. We got Britney Spears and Lady Gaga, so I consider that you owe us on that front.